You will recognize the women in the foreign service because they have the biggest eye bags. And they have the biggest handbags. We work 24 by 7. You know, we have no time zone. We're on call anytime. And at the same time, especially for me, I felt like we were, remember Avis and Hertz? Avis was the number 2 rental car. I felt like Avis. I had to work harder, to prove myself. So I always said, okay, we're the Avis. Remember, we're Avis, we have to work harder and prove to the other people. Because I felt that nobody paid attention to us because we were women. So they always appointed the men to be their special assistants, to head posts, and they relegated us to the post that nobody wanted to go to. I mean, that's how I felt. And then at the same time, of course, we had one disadvantage. We had no wives. No one to take care of our dinners, no one to take care of the social things that we had to do. Well, our male colleagues, they were ambassadors and they had wives. Sometimes they had wives who were also ambassadors. And I think Christina understands that very well. So we had to worry about the menu for the dinner while our male colleagues had their wives take care of that. And at the same time, we came from various fields. Like my majors really were literature and education. And then I had to brush up on economics and political theories and everything else. So at one point in my career, I had to read one book a month, and people couldn't understand that. So it's true, as Secretary Albert said, we tried harder. We didn't take things for granted. And because we didn't want to be known as shallow and fluzy, so we had to speak more with substance, and we always have to prove ourselves also among our peers. So for me, being in the foreign service, it was a learning experience.
I came into the foreign service quite reluctant. I felt so scared of the exams because it was such a competitive exams, and I did not want to fail. But it was through the prodding of a dear friend who said, "Hey, you can make it," and true enough, I made it. That was the start. And of course, joining the foreign service at the time I came in, it was in 1982, 83. It was still a different DFA in a sense that there were not too many women yet at that time. But as I stayed on in the service, we've seen how the numbers increased over time. And I think it was because of the very enabling environment, particularly from the national level and within the organization itself. And it was at that particular time when there were quite a lot of changes in our regulations. We lost a lot of women diplomats because they got married to male diplomats too. And they really had to seek permission to be able to do so. And if it was a diplomat outrightly, you have to resign. So we lost a lot, but I think this became a big issue. And it was at the time of the late Undersecretary Letty Ramos-Shahani, who gave so much attention to it apart from the Foreign Service Act and apart from the other issues in the DFA. They worked very hard, really, to make it really a welcoming environment for women. And now we find many of our women are married to foreigners. I was very lucky because I also had my husband, who was my batchmate. And it is a challenge, I think, because from the very start, we had to talk it out. We passed at the same time, and we joined the Foreign Service at the same time. So we had to make choices. And the choice was we go ahead, but be ready when changes have to happen. And this started to happen when we became a bit more senior. We went on separate foreign postings, which meant that one of us had to take care of the children, and that was me. I had to take care of our 2 children. And also struggling to be able to balance bringing up your family, keeping your husband, making your children happy. And I think we manage. I think it is a lot of teamwork, and I thank my husband very much for that. And of course, my mother, who was always there with us to take care of our children. So It was really a challenge because you had to do as much as you can. In the postings that I had, we were first in London, and then we were moved to Beijing. Now, those were two extreme places to be in at that particular point in time. But as a foreign service officer, you have to find what is best that you can really do for your country. In London, we focused a lot on cultural and even a lot of information about the Philippines. Because the Philippines was not very much well known yet, except after the 1986 revolution, when people started to ask, where is the Philippines? And they wanted to know more about the Philippines. It was a wonderful time to be a diplomat when people took great interest in your country. And we felt that we may not be a political power, but soft power can eventually become a very good tool whereby we can do a very good projection of the country. China was a very challenging pause. I think all of us who went through that had to go through different stages, but it was a great learning experience. It was always said, if you've done China, you can do it anywhere. Well, we managed to carry on very, very good relations at that time. That was the 1990s, just after the Tiananmen incident. We carried on very good relations with China. We put a lot of effort in trade, culture, and tourism. I should say that I am a very, very people-centered and also soft power, should we say, believer of soft power, because getting to people through all or across all categories would be the best way you could reach out. And I found it to be extremely rewarding. As ambassador to Singapore, we focused a lot on culture and the arts. We had very good relations, and we continue to have very good relations with Singapore. Singapore has everything. Economic, we were given that great opportunity to do as much as we can to bring in investments and to bring in trade businesses both ways. Secretary Albert was there when the Philippines became the focus of the National Heritage Commission of China as the country of focus. And we were made to exhibit in the 3 big museums in Singapore for 3 months, all about the Philippines. And I was very, very happy that we were able to contribute to the trail, and we were able to nurture quite a lot of Filipino artists, budding artists, extremely outstanding artists, who together made it in Singapore and expanded it to the rest of the world. And finally, I was in Singapore too, and Hong Kong, 2 big places where we have concentration of Filipinos. As one has been mentioned earlier, people think of diplomacy as plum, plates, visas, passports, but they forget to see the Filipinos working overseas who get separated from their families. So I knew what it was in Hong Kong having 200,000 Filipino domestic workers, and also in Singapore. It was where the test of our humanity came in. How much do you love your people, and how much will you really do to protect their interests? And I think it was a great experience because we were able to do as much as we could to be able to help protect those Filipino women who were overseas, taking care of the children of others while leaving their children behind. And I would say that they really had contributed a lot. In fact, in the various community events, there have been a lot of respect to the Filipinos who have taken care of the children. And they believe that they also have an imprint on the children themselves. And then, of course, in Singapore, we did the same thing. We had all cases. cases of trafficking, cases of drug trafficking, cases of exploitation. But this was a challenge for all of us. And that also prepared us all to be emotionally stable as diplomats. Because this is a challenge that you have to face. You have to be able to look at their issues well and make the appropriate recommendations or representations in the country. So I would like to look at that more really like, there were a lot that we did from the political, economic, but I think the people as the center of your service becomes extremely important in this profession. Thank you.
Why is the gender perspective as applied to diplomacy important? I guess the most persuasive argument was put forward in 1982 by American professor Carol Gilligan in her book, In a Different Voice, where she suggests that men and women think differently. Men emphasize rights, justice, autonomy, and hierarchy, and women think mostly in terms of relationship, care, communion, and non-hierarchy as themes. Incidentally, Harvard University Press called her work the little book that started a revolution. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens to that book that you see in front of you. The feminist perspective in diplomacy gained prominence with the adoption of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. The resolution formally acknowledged the changing nature of warfare, in which civilians are increasingly targeted and women continue to be excluded from the participation in the peace process. The resolution also affirmed that peace and security efforts are more sustainable when women are equal partners in the prevention of violent conflict, the delivery of relief and recovery efforts, and in the forging of lasting peace. This was earlier mentioned by Secretary Albert when she referred to what we did during the peace process in Mindanao. Gender issues eventually became a regular agenda item in the UN, most notably with the adoption of the MDG and its succeeding program, the SDG. But while we have women diplomats to advance these issues, they still have to face challenges in their respective careers. In a recent forum on women diplomats organized by the Philippine Foreign Service Institute, the panelists agreed that there should be increased discussions in gender relations in diplomacy. They recommended that government bureaucracies should develop pro-family work policies by addressing the issue of multitasking among female diplomats to help them achieve a balance in work and family life. They also stressed that gender equality in the foreign service should reflect intentional cooperation in pursuit of shared goals rather than gender competition. Having these challenges in mind, we can better appreciate what Secretary Albert has initiated. It is the first building block that could generate further research on gender issues, not only in the Philippines, but hopefully in Asia, in the Pacific. And we hope and we expect that this will lead to further reforms in the Philippine Foreign Service. Congratulations, Secretary Albert, and I look forward to the publication of the second volume of your book. Thank you.
As has always been discussed in the past, here in the Philippines, abroad, especially in the United States, there has always been this gender issue. That was a challenge for the Filipino women diplomats. And I would say that we had to work harder than men. If we have the same, more or less the same qualifications at that time, men were chosen, and of course, rather than the women. But that's an issue in almost all of the countries, I would say. So we we worked harder, and in 2014 there was already 40% women. There have been more and more women who have passed the Foreign Service Officer examination. And I think at the present we now have a 50-50 ratio. And I think that Ambassador Louis Cruz is here now because he wants to prove gender equality in the Philippines. But anyway, as a commercial counselor, I've been posted in different places. In Paris, that was my first posting, and then in Los Angeles. And I went back to Paris again. And then I entered the FA, and of course I started from the home office. I was being recruited by Ambassador Albert, but somebody beat her to be, for me to go to the European Affairs Office. So that was my start. But I was lucky that during that time, economic diplomacy was the priority. And so I'm so happy because I shined because of my background in DTI. But anyway, it was a big experience for me. And when I was posted as a diplomat, as a real diplomat from the DFA, we had to really prove ourselves. So I thought that if a woman, Filipino woman, to become a successful diplomat, we should have the 3 Ds. We have to have determination because we really have to be serious about all these things. And we had to be diligent and hardworking more than the men, as always, because we always had to prove ourselves. And that is, I think, what is happening all around the world. And then, of course, we have discipline. And, of course, everybody has discipline who is in the diplomatic service. But one thing that is important, I would say, in diplomacy is charm and grace. I'm not saying that men do not have charm and grace, but I think we have more of that. So we beat you to that, gentlemen. So I think that is how, because relationship, diplomacy is relationships, whether you like it or not. So, and of course, balancing of your IQ and EQ, because if you have too much IQ and you don't have EQ, then you won't be as successful. I think that women have really contributed to the to diplomacy in terms of relations between the Philippines and the different countries. So with that, I would like to end my talk